Let's be honest about video game AI. We all know enemies aren't actually plotting our downfall, they are mostly just putting on a good show before letting us win. Sure, there are some legends which might really get the drop on you, which we are going to talk about in this video, but still most of the time, from most developers, they just want to create the illusion of a fair fight. But when a game really puts in the effort to outsmart you, enemies coordinate, flank your cover, and actively try to adapt to your playstyle, it really changes the tension in the room. So today we're looking at the rare games where the AI actually tries its absolute hardest to outplay you. F.E.A.R 2005, it is pretty insane to me that a shooter from 2005 still makes modern enemies look completely brain dead. When you go up against the replica soldiers in this game, it actually feels like you are fighting a squad of real players who are sweating it out in a voice chat together. The developers use this system called goal-oriented action planning, which is just a technical way of saying the AI are not following a rigid pre-programmed script. Instead, the game essentially tells the AI, go take this guy out, and then completely leaves it up to them to figure out how to pull it off based on whatever office building or warehouse you happen to be fighting in. They get incredibly creative with it. If you try to camp in a single hallway and funnel them in, they won't politely run into your crosshairs one by one like bowling pins. They actually act like they value their own digital lives. They will sprint up, physically kick over a heavy desk to build their own cover, and pin you down with blind fire while the rest of their squad quietly circles around the map to flank you. I cannot tell you how many times I thought I was safe reloading behind a wall, only to have a soldier dive right through a plate glass window to catch me off guard from behind. What really sells the panic though is the radio chatter. You hear them constantly communicating in real time. They call out your exact position while their flashlights sweep through the dark corners. If you pull out a heavier weapon, they warn each other to keep their distance. If you manage to drop 3 of them in a row, the survivors will actually panic, call for backup, and organize a tactical retreat to regroup. You never get the feeling that you are just shooting at generic moving targets. Every single firefight turns into an intense, sweaty game of cat and mouse where the AI is actively trying to trap you in a corner. Alien Isolation 2014. Playing this game is basically a prolonged anxiety attack because the xenomorph completely breaks the rules of traditional horror game design. It does not pace back and forth on a neat little patrol route waiting for you to sneak past. It actively, relentlessly hunts you down. To pull this off, the developers gave the game 2 separate AI brains working together to ruin your day. The first brain is the director. It always knows your general vicinity, acting kind of like a cruel game master. Its job is to manage the pacing and tension, giving you a brief moment to breathe, and then pinging the second brain, the alien itself, with a rough hint about what sector of the space station you are currently cowering in. But the alien's brain is where the real terror lives. It operates entirely on its own senses. It has to actually spot you, hear your heavy footsteps, or notice a locker door you carelessly left open. And worst of all, it learns your habits. The game features a massive hidden background system of locked behaviors that the alien gradually unlocks based directly on how you choose to play. If your go-to survival tactic is hiding inside lockers and holding your breath, the alien will eventually catch on. It will start pausing in front of lockers, sniffing the vents, and eventually ripping the doors off their hinges just to check. If you rely heavily on tossing flares or noisemakers into a corner to distract it while you sneak by, it will absolutely fall for the trick the first couple of times. But if you abuse that mechanic, the alien adjusts. It will eventually ignore the loud beeping gadget entirely, turn around and start actively searching for the person who threw it. And then, the absolute peak of this AI design happens late in the game when you finally get your hands on the flamethrower. For a brief moment, you feel powerful because a blast of fire will actually cause the xenomorph to screech and retreat into the vents, but the comfort is incredibly short-lived. The alien quickly realizes that a frontal assault equals getting burned. It adapts its entire hunting strategy. Instead of charging you in the hallways, it starts using the ceiling vents almost exclusively, waiting silently to drop down directly behind you when your guard is down and your weapon is pointed the wrong way. You are never allowed to rely on a single trick for too long. The AI forces you to constantly evolve your playstyle, throwing away whatever strategy worked in the last level. It is one of the few gaming experiences where you genuinely feel like the enemy is studying you just as closely as you are studying it. I think Last of Us 2 has some of the best, smooth, and satisfying third-person gameplay out of any AAA titles. Especially playing on the highest difficulty, the game is a real change. Like, this game's enemies are way smarter than they have any right to be. They do not just stand around waiting for you to do something dumb. They call out your position, flank you, and keep pushing you like they actually want you dead. It gets stressful fast because once they know where you are, they start moving like a real squad instead of walking into the same trap over and over. And on grounded, you have to keep moving. They know where you are because they hear where the shots are coming from. If you shoot and move, at some point they will start searching again. Honestly, I'm really admirative of the AI enemy here. I mean, I'm surprised by how smart they act sometimes, like the way they keep their distance when they know you're behind cover. They'll come around the cover but stay far enough that they'll be able to shoot you before you try rushing them, or the way they stay hidden in situations where they have an advantage, like if they have a rifle, and especially if they're above you. The way they call out to check up on a friend that I killed and them not answering is seemingly what alerts them that something is wrong. The way that the AI will coordinate patrols once you've alerted them is quite impressive as well. It's not always individual behavior either. I'm always surprised by the huge variety of outcomes when letting the infected loose on the WLF on Capitol Hill, for example. Watching the AI attack itself is mesmerizing because it often really feels like the humans are outsmarting the infected. Also, those damn stalkers are too fucking smart. But yeah, what can I say? Naughty Dog knows their stuff. Can't wait for the next game. When you play a typical stealth game, you usually find that one perfectly overpowered strategy, like crouching in a bush with a silenced pistol, and just abuse it for the entire 40-hour campaign. In MGS5, the game straight up refuses to let you do that. The enemy AI runs on this brilliant background network called the Revenge System, which basically means the opposing military forces actively communicate, track your specific habits, and adapt their loadouts to counter whatever you are doing. If you are the kind of player who strictly attacks outposts at midnight because the guards have a harder time seeing you, they'll catch on after a few missions. Suddenly, you'll arrive at a base to find it rigged with extra floodlights and half the guards will be wearing night vision goggles. Your easy midnight raids suddenly become incredibly stressful. So maybe you decide to switch tactics and start picking guys off with a sniper rifle from a hilltop. And well, guess what, mate? Do that too many times and the enemy commanders will deploy counter snipers to constantly scan the surrounding ridges looking for your scope glint. If you get too comfortable popping easy headshots with a tranquilizer dart, the next time you drop into a combat zone, the guards will be wearing heavy reinforced riot helmets. If you rely heavily on smoke or sleeping gas grenades to bypass checkpoints, they start issuing gas masks to the troops. The AI forces you to constantly completely reinvent your playstyle. If you rely on rushing in for close quarters takedowns, the bases will be flooded with heavily armored guards carrying shotguns. They'll even catch on to your Fulton extraction balloons. If a guard sees his buddy suddenly rocketing up into the sky on a balloon, he won't just stand there confused, he'll immediately aim his rifle up and shoot the balloon down to save him. The real-time communication between the guards and their command post, CP, adds a whole other layer of anxiety. The enemies actually pay attention to their environment. If a guard expects to cross paths with his buddy on a patrol route and the guy isn't there, he doesn't just shrug and forget about it. He radios CP to report a missing soldier. CP then orders him to investigate the last known position. If you snipe a guard in the leg to incapacitate him, his squad mates will drag his body to cover while laying down suppressing fire. If you decide to shoot out their radio equipment to cut off their communications, CP will realize there's dead air and dispatch an entire heavily armed investigation team to check on the silent outpost. You actually end up trapped in this massive arms race with the AI. You're forced to physically sabotage their supply lines by sending your own men on background missions just to blow up a warehouse full of helmets or night vision goggles, all so you can go back to using your favorite sniper rifle for a few more hours. It creates this incredibly immersive feedback loop where the enemies feel like an organized military force that is genuinely learning from every single mistake they make. I think it never feels like the game is cheaply boosting enemy stats. It just feels like a realistic military force adjusting its tactics to counter a specific recurring threat. If you want them to stop wearing helmets, you actually have to stop going for headshots and start shooting them in the arms or legs for a few missions, or literally blow up the supply trucks delivering their defensive gear. The game constantly monitors your comfort zone and forces you out of it, making sure you have to get creative and use your entire arsenal. If you want a game that makes you feel like just another guy trying to survive, S.T.A.L.K.E.R is the king. Most games make you the center of the universe, but in the zone, you're just another dude with a rusty AK. The AI here runs on this system called A-Life, and it is genuinely wild. Basically, while you're off scavenging for artifacts, the AI is literally living its own life. Bandits are out there ambushing lone stalkers, packs of mutants are hunting for food, and factions are having full-on wars. And most of this happens whether you're there to see it or not. I've had times where I spent 20 minutes planning an assault on a bandit camp, only to show up and find out a pack of blind dogs already wiped them all out. It makes the world feel alive and completely unpredictable. Like, I'll be walking through a field and stumble across a pile of bodies, only to realize a pack of mutated dogs and a rival faction of stalkers just had a full-blown war 10 minutes ago while you were miles away trading gear. The enemies don't just spawn in to wait for you, they're out there scavenging for artifacts, hunting for food, and trying to survive just like you are. When you actually get into a gunfight, the AI is remarkably smart about using the environment. They don't just stand behind a crate and pop their heads up like whack-a-moles. If you pin a group of bandits down, they will coordinate. One guy will keep you busy by taking pot shots from behind a wall, and while you're focused on him, two of his buddies will quietly crawl through the tall grass or loop around a hill to catch you from the side. They actually prioritize breaking your line of sight over just finding solid cover, which makes them feel way more like real people trying not to get shot. And I think, if I recall it right, there's this legendary story from the devs that during testing, the AI was actually too good at the game. Because they could complete quests and trade just like the player, one AI NPC actually managed to beat the entire game and reach the final objective before the testers could even get halfway through. They had to actually dial it back so the player wouldn't feel like a side character in their own story. There's no safety in camping here. If you stay in one spot for too long, you're basically asking for a shotgun blast to the back of the head. And because the ballistics are so realistic, they'll actually shoot through thin fences or wooden doors if they think you're hiding there. It's messy, it's janky, and it's honestly terrifying because it feels like you're fighting people who are just as desperate to stay alive as you are. Man, it is hard to explain just how much of a holy crap moment Halo was back in the day. Before this, most console shooters felt like you were just moving through a shooting gallery. But in Halo, the Covenant actually felt like an intelligent, coordinated alien army. Even now, if you boot up the original campaign on Legendary, the AI, especially the elites, will absolutely smoke you if you aren't paying attention. The elites are the real stars here. They aren't just bullet sponges, they're designed to be your tactical equals. They have the same recharging energy shields you do, and they play the game exactly the same way. If you start winning a gunfight and pop an elite shield, he doesn't just stand there and die. He'll let out a roar of pure frustration, dive behind a rock, and wait for his shields to recharge before coming back at you. It turns every fight into this high-stakes duel where you're constantly trying to press your advantage before they can reset. But what makes it feel so human is how the different alien ranks work together. It's like a tiny ecosystem of terror. The grunts are basically the comic relief. They're cowards who mostly just provide cover fire. But the second you take out the elite leading them, the grunts absolutely lose their minds. They'll scream "Leader fallen" and literally run away with their hands in the air. It's hilarious, sure, but it's also a brilliant bit of tactical feedback. You aren't just lowering a health bar, you're breaking their morale. Then you've got the Jackals, who are the ultimate annoyance. They stay back with those energy shields, forcing you to actually aim for the little notch in their armor or try to bounce a grenade behind them. While you're distracted trying to deal with a Jackal, the elites are usually already flanking you. They'll use the open environments to circle around your cover, and if you try to stick them with a plasma grenade, they have this terrifyingly fast dodge move that makes you feel like a total amateur for missing. The AI doesn't just cheat by knowing where you are either. They operate on actual sight and sound. If you sneak around a corner and they haven't seen you yet, you can actually watch them patrolling and talking to each other. But the moment that music kicks in and they spot you, the coordination is instant. It's one of those rare games where the enemies feel like they're actually trying to win the war, not just serve as XP for your next level. Now, this game is really different, like I think kind of built different. In Rain Worlds, the AI really doesn't feel like it was designed to entertain you, but more like it feels like it exists whether you're there or not, if that's the right way to put it. Because most games, even smart ones, still revolve around you. Enemies wait, patrol, react to triggers. But in here, nah man, not really. Every creature is basically running its own little survival simulation. Predators are just hunting because they're hungry, not because you walked into a zone. And that really completely changes how the game feels. I've had moments where a lizard spots me and starts chasing. Pretty normal, right? But then it doesn't just follow a straight path. It cuts off, climbs walls, takes weird routes, and sometimes just disappears, only to show up ahead of you like it predicted where you were going. It's honestly unsettling. And then there's the ecosystem stuff, which is where it really gets going, I would say. Like, creatures interact with each other constantly. You might be sneaking around and suddenly two predators start fighting, or something bigger shows up and now everything goes into chaos. Sometimes that saves you, or maybe it makes things way worse. But basically, it's not scripted moments, just stuff happening in the world. Another thing that makes the AI feel so smart is that it doesn't play fair. There's no, this enemy always does X. One encounter might be super chill, the next time the same creature is aggressive as hell and won't let you breathe. You can't rely on patterns the way you normally would. You actually have to read the situation in the moment. And the biggest shift mentally is that you are not the main character here. You're weak, you're small, and most things in the world can destroy you instantly. So instead of outsmarting enemies like a badass, most of the time you're just trying to survive, escape, hide, or use the environment to your advantage. That's what makes it so memorable though. When you finally do outplay something, like beating a predator into another creature or barely escaping a chase, it feels earned in a way most games don't even come close to. Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory's guards will actually ruin your day if you treat them like typical stealth game idiots. I learned this the hard way. So you shoot out a light to make a dark path for yourself. Smart, right? Guard walks under it, stops, looks up at the broken bulb, and radios his buddy. Now two guards are in that hallway with flashlights checking every corner. They're not on alert yet, but they know something's up. The AI talks to each other constantly. One guard tells another to check a specific room while he covers a different area. They actually coordinate. I've watched them find a body, immediately call it in, and then the whole squad reorganizes their patrol routes. Not just random panic, but actual tactical repositioning. Here's what really got me though. I knocked out a guard in a storage room, came back through the same area 10 minutes later, and there's a guy just posted up there now, clearly waiting to see if I'd return. They learn your patterns. Use the same vent twice and someone will be watching it. Keep shooting lights and they start moving in groups. And they don't forget. You hide in a locker and they'll search for actual minutes. I've sat there listening to footsteps, radio chatter, doors opening, just waiting for them to finally give up. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to abandon your hiding spot and improvise because they're just not leaving. The game punishes you for playing it like other stealth games. No quick save cheesing the same route. No memorizing one safe path. You have to actually think and change your approach because these guards adapt.
Hey, Toma! This light is broken! Who did that? What do you mean, who did that? Lights break on their own, you know? Who's been leaving the doors wide open? What? You think we've got an intruder? You're way too paranoid. Paranoid, huh? We'll see!
Dishonored, if you're the kind of player who loves to feel like a supernatural ninja, Dishonored is basically your playground, but the guards in Dunwall are way more perceptive than you'd expect for a game from 2012. Arcane Studios didn't just give them vision cones, they gave them actual common sense that can really get you off guard if you get too comfortable. The coolest thing about the AI here is how they handle anomalies. Most stealth games have guards who shrug off a door being left open or a candle being blown out. Not these guys. If a guard returns to his post and notices a door is swung wide when it was closed 2 minutes ago, he doesn't just ignore it. He'll actually draw his sword, start looking around, and go into a suspicious state where his vision range literally gets wider because he's actively looking for trouble. They even notice if a buddy who's supposed to be on the corner isn't there anymore. It makes you feel like you're leaving a physical footprint on the world every time you mess with something.
Attention, the solitary wing is off limits to maintenance.
When you actually get spotted, the AI coordination is super impressive. They don't just run at you one by one to get sliced. They'll actually fall back to group up, blow whistles to call for reinforcements, and try to overwhelm you with numbers. If you try to pull the classic move of standing on a high ledge where they can't reach you, they won't just stand there looking confused. They'll start chucking rocks or firing their pistols to flush you down. They're also surprisingly good at searching. If they lose sight of you, they don't just go back to their path, they'll start checking under tables, behind curtains, and in dark corners where they think a person might actually hide. The verticality is where they really try to outplay you. and while they aren't quite as good at looking up as they are at looking straight ahead, if you're making noise on the pipes above them, they will eventually tilt their heads up and spot you. It creates this constant tension where you realize you aren't just invisible because you're high up, you're only safe as long as you're quiet. It's a masterclass in making you feel like a predator, but reminding you that if you get sloppy, the prey is smart enough to call in the cavalry and shut you down.
Thank you.
Okay, this one is actually insane conceptually. In Echo, the enemies don't just outsmart you, they literally become you. The whole system revolves around the palace watching everything you do. Every action gets recorded. The way you move, whether you sneak or run, if you attack, how aggressive you are. All of it. Then, the game resets the power, and that's when things flip. The enemies come back as echoes and start using the exact behaviors you showed earlier. So early on, you feel in control. You're moving clean, taking enemies out, figuring things out like a normal stealth game. Then suddenly the next cycle hits and now the enemies are doing the same stuff. If you were sprinting a lot, now they sprint. If you were shooting, now they shoot. If you were opening doors and taking shortcuts, now they know the map just like you do. What makes it hit harder is that it's your fault. You can't blame the game for being unfair because you trained them that way. If you played messy, they become chaotic. If you played aggressive, they become dangerous. If you rely on one tactic too much, they turn that exact tactic against you. So you start playing in a completely different way. You hold back on purpose. You avoid doing useful things because you don't want the enemies to learn them. Sometimes you'll walk instead of run or avoid killing someone just to keep the next cycle easier. You're thinking ahead all the time, not just about surviving now, but about what kind of enemies you're creating for later. And that creates this really unique pressure. You're not just adapting to the AI, you're shaping it. Every mistake sticks with you for a while. Every habit you form can come back and punish you. By the time you get deeper into the game, it feels like you're fighting a version of yourself that learned all your bad habits. And if you weren't careful early on, it can get out of control fast. That's what makes it stand out. The game doesn't need super advanced enemy logic when the core idea already guarantees the AI will keep up with you.
Это КП. Хватит поясничать. Конец связи.